She believed she could vanish without a trace, slipping silently through the shadows. Quietly, she tried to erase every sign of her crime, but her plan was fatally flawed. A simple surveillance camera, unnoticed and unassuming, would soon expose her darkest secret and unmask a chilling murder. History shows us how killers have been caught on camera, disposing of damning evidence, like a teenager preying on an unsuspecting woman in the dead of day, or a man who tried to shift blame onto another, oblivious to the fact that cameras had captured his every move at the scene. But before we dive deeper, we must return to that fateful night, the night Therese Costa crossed paths with her killer. On a cold March day in 2018, 56-year-old Lois drove away from her Blooming Prairie, Minnesota home, leaving behind more than just the familiar. She wanted to shed the weight of her past, the nickname Losing Streak Lois, and reinvent herself. As she headed south, she took on a new identity, Stormy Liberty. Yet what truly trailed behind her was far darker: the murdered body of her husband and a trail of unanswered questions. Desperately seeking a new self, she chose to kill once more. This is the strange and twisted saga of Lois Reese, whose reckless gamble on chaos ignited a multi-state manhunt. A call came in desperate and urgent. Greg, a concerned business partner, reached out to law enforcement. He sought a detective or deputy sheriff to report a troubling disappearance. His partner David had vanished, and something felt terribly wrong. Greg explained that he hadn't heard from David in 16 days, nor had any employees. David's home, just 100 feet from their waxworm farm outside Babbitt, was eerily quiet. David's wife had reported missing receipts and checks from a bag that a courier was supposed to pick up. He was expected to appear in the Fishing Journal of Illinois. David had been ill, and no one was to disturb him. Greg spoke of the family's old farm still in business. He revealed a history of Lois facing financial troubles, including gambling debts totaling $300,000 alongside mental health struggles. Though hesitant, Greg admitted he now had 4 anxious employees at the farm. Though he lived in Montana, these 4 workers were growing increasingly worried. Soon, deputies from the Dodge County Sheriff's Office and Blooming Prairie Police arrived at David and Lois's home. The day was bitter cold, with temperatures near freezing and a thin veil of snow blanketing the earth. 2 of David's employees met the officers, their faces etched with concern for their missing boss and friend. At first, the officers found the house locked, tight lights on inside, but no answer at the door or on the phones. With no response, they and David's friends began circling the house, peering through windows for any sign of life. At the rear, a faint light glimmered from a bathroom window. The window was partially open. Corporal Peterson hoisted Officer Peach up to the window for a closer look. Peering inside, Peach's eyes fell on a lifeless figure sprawled on his back, half shrouded by a blanket. The man's feet jutted out from beneath the covering, chillingly exposed. The employees helped find a hidden key beneath the LP gas tank's hood, granting entry through the garage. David's truck remained parked outside, but Lois's white 2005 Cadillac Escalade was nowhere to be found. Inside, the house seemed undisturbed. The kitchen was spotless, showing no signs of conflict. The living room TV hummed quietly, though the cable box was switched off. Recent activity marked the laundry room, and the master bedroom door stood open. Inside the bedroom, a door to the bathroom was sealed shut with a rolled towel pressed against its base. Beyond that door, investigators discovered the body of 54-year-old David Reese, cold and lifeless for days. Crime scene specialists from the sheriff's office arrived soon after to process the grim scene. The date was Friday, March 23rd. No one except Lois had seen David since they attended their grandchild's basketball game on March 11th. Family members recalled a heated argument that night, tension that likely followed them home. Questions mounted. Where was Lois now? Had she fled, or was she also in grave danger? Authorities issued a BOLO alert immediately for her and her missing vehicle. Examination revealed David had suffered 3 gunshot wounds at close range. When his body was turned, an ominous .22 caliber rifle shell casing was found embedded in his back. The autopsy revealed the first bullet struck the right side of his chest, piercing his heart, damaging the left ventricle and atrium before passing through his right lung. A small 40-grain projectile was recovered from inside his body. The second shot entered his right back, also penetrating heart and lung tissue. The bullet from this wound remained unrecovered. The final gunshot struck his left arm just below the elbow, exiting an inch and a half lower. Investigators believe this wound was sustained as David tried to shield himself. Later, a bullet was found lodged in the bathroom walk-in closet wall, marking the violent scene's grim final detail. Investigators uncovered a shell casing in the kitchen, identical to one found beneath David's lifeless body. Nearby, they found a partially emptied magazine and loose bullets scattered in the master bedroom. An unlocked empty fire safe added to the growing list of disturbing clues. But who were these people behind this grim scene? David, a United States Navy veteran, had met his wife Lois during his stationing in California. They married in 1982 and settled back in Rochester, Minnesota, the very place where they both grew up. David was a man who cherished fishing, hunting, and boating. He eventually opened a bait shop, running it for several years. Lois supported the family by providing daycare and babysitting services from their home. In 2010, David closed his store and shifted to raising wax worms, supplying bait shops throughout the region. By all accounts, their ventures were moderately successful. They raised 3 children and watched their family grow with grandchildren. Yet beneath this facade, Lois's gambling addiction took hold. She frequented casinos and regularly bought lottery tickets, spiraling into a dangerous habit. Her debts mounted quickly, straining both their relationship and their finances. At one point, a social services worker filed an affidavit accusing Lois of stealing money from her mentally disabled sister's guardianship account, with some of the funds reportedly spent at a local casino. Though no charges were pressed, Lois was ordered to repay just over $100,000, yet no records indicate she ever fulfilled this repayment. Locals and casinos began dubbing her Losing Streak Lois, a nickname born from repeated reports of theft and deception to cover her gambling debts. At home, David took precautions. He never brought receipts or business checks inside the house, instead keeping them locked away at the wax worm farm office in the barn. This detail would prove crucial in unraveling the mystery. Employees provided a handwritten timeline revealing that David last saw Lois on Thursday, March 22nd, when she assisted with a large order. She left before lunch, mentioning that despite David's illness, he intended to compete in a fishing tournament that weekend in Spring Valley, Illinois. The following day, the company's customer check bag disappeared and David failed to sign in for the tournament. Concerned, a welfare check was conducted, leading to the grim discovery of his body, but Lois was nowhere to be found. Autopsy results estimated David had been dead for some time. Further scrutiny of the timeline revealed employees hadn't seen or spoken to David since March 8th. The last reported sighting was at a basketball game on March 11th, where David and Lois had a heated argument. The very next day, Lois visited the wax worm farm, claiming David was sick and staying home. She insisted employees not call him. Investigators would come to believe that Lois shot and killed David on the night of March 11th. It appeared she sealed the bathroom door to contain the stench of his decomposing body while leaving a window open to let cold wind slow the decay. During this chilling period, Lois seemed to be indulging herself. St. Patrick's Day was always a significant celebration for her. That year, she was determined to honor the occasion in full, embracing her Irish roots with enthusiasm. On Friday, March 16th, she visited Fantastic Sam's salon for a fresh hairstyle, preparing for a night at her favorite casino. Elizabeth Sorensen, the stylist who worked on Lois's hair, later recounted their interaction. She mentioned Lois arrived as a first-time walk-in client. Lois explained she was getting ready for St. Patrick's Day festivities. She revealed plans to visit the Diamond Joe Casino and requested a hairstyle reminiscent of Peggy Bundy, voluminous and bold. Elizabeth gave her a blowout, curling the ends and backcombing to achieve the desired big hair. Lois intended to add sparkles along the part line at home, completing the look. She promised to return and show Elizabeth the finished style, but never came back. The stylist estimated Lois left around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, shortly after lunch. When asked if Lois said anything more about her casino plans, Elizabeth recalled she was meeting friends. Lois expressed a fondness for unwinding through gambling, eager to celebrate fully dressed for St. Patrick's Day. That night, Lois appeared at the Diamond Joe Worth Casino in Northwood, Iowa, roughly 40 miles from home. This was her preferred haunt. She spent most of her time in the casino's restaurant. A waitress remembered serving her and would later speak with investigators. Initially skeptical, the waitress sought confirmation. She recalled only first names David and Lois. Seeing the name David on the card, she identified the woman as Lois, confirming it by checking her ID. She pressed for more details, asking if the witness could remember the last name connected to the pair. The witness confirmed identifying the woman as Lois at the casino, and upon checking her ID, the name matched. She reached out to a friend, confessing her doubts and wondering whether she should confront Lois directly. Her uncertainty lingered, caught between knowing and not knowing what to do next. The witness reflected on the news reports and lists she had seen before the incident, struggling to piece together the full picture. Questions arose: was this connected to the troubling events unfolding in Bloomington? Though the witness had seen something recently, unfamiliarity with the area meant they had not delved into the details. The witness decided to clarify the timeline. On the night in question, she had personally questioned Lois. She recalled asking about Table 51, noting that Lois was paying with a credit card, and confirmed the table number. The gender mismatch on the card raised suspicions given Lois was female. She expressed confidence in identifying Lois herself. The witness confirmed receiving Lois's ID bearing her name. She was then asked to describe Lois's appearance. Not particularly thin nor overweight, Lois had a medium build. Her hair was a dirty blonde shade more muted than photographic evidence suggested. The witness doubted the photos captured the true tone of Lois's hair. She emphasized the hair's duller hue, not the bright blonde seen in pictures. Lois had been seated during their interaction. The witness noted Lois was taller than her own 5'2" stature, but not markedly tall. She recalled the approximate time frame of the encounter, between 6 and 7:30 p.m. on that Thursday night, the 22nd. Lois had been at the establishment dining leisurely on an appetizer and a salad. She lingered for about an hour to an hour and a half. The witness had seen her multiple times, but not necessarily served her as often as others. Lois typically sat alone at the bar near the fire. She was calm and polite, raising no immediate concerns or red flags. The witness confirmed the date as Thursday the 22nd and the time frame from 6 to 7:30 p.m. She was absolutely certain of this. Lois had arrived alone, spent the entire time by herself, and left solo. Lois never mentioned anyone accompanying her. No companions were ever observed. This made the credit card bearing David's name particularly suspicious. Had the witness seen Lois with a husband before the card might have seemed less unusual. On March 22nd, Lois checked into the adjoining Country Inn and Suites beside the casino. Security footage confirmed her arrival. The recordings showed Lois enjoying herself there. She even reached out to an old friend, Louise. Lois asked Louise to meet her at the casino the following day. Meanwhile, Lois had visited the bank holding David's business account, cashing all the business checks. She transferred around $11,000 into her own account. Lois was prepared for what lay ahead. A phone call was made. Louise answered, confirming her identity. Mike Anderson identified himself and apologized for missing her earlier. He indicated an intent to discuss matters she was likely aware of. Louise acknowledged being nearby the day before, but not presently. She agreed to continue the conversation over the phone. The call proceeded. Mike began by asking Louise about her association with Lois. Louise revealed a long-standing acquaintance, knowing Lois since she was 10. She recounted receiving a call from Lois on Friday morning around 11:30 or 11:45. Lois had asked to meet at Diamond Joe's, explaining David was gone, and she wanted to spend time at the casino. Louise described Lois as an avid gambler, contrasting herself as a casual visitor for relaxation. She admitted Lois was a high roller, unlike herself. David arrived around 2:00 p.m. and they settled at a particular slot machine where coins flew around. The machine operated on 50-cent bets. They spent time there, chatting with no incidents or problems to report. Shock rippled through the community when news broke during the 10 o'clock broadcast. Few were as stunned as those closest to the case. When last seen by acquaintances, Lois appeared outwardly normal, giving no hint of the dark turmoil beneath the surface. No visible signs suggested trouble. No whispered warnings or uneasy glances betrayed any hidden conflict. Lois did mention that David was gone, but not as if he had left for a simple weekend trip. David was a businessman involved in trucking through a local fish market, making his absence unusual, but not immediately alarming. Her words implied travel, suggesting he was simply away on business, rather than missing under suspicious circumstances. This pattern was not unheard of for David, who often traveled for his trucking ventures linked to the fish market. Indeed, his work regularly took him away from home, so such absences did not raise immediate concern. The fish market itself was a gritty place dealing in fish and worms, a modest but steady business. Despite the rough trade, this routine was part of their daily lives. That afternoon, Lois and another acquaintance spent time at the casino, a familiar haunt for her. The meeting lasted from 2 until about 3:30 in the afternoon, marked by casual conversation, but no hint of impending tragedy. Plans to leave together fell through when Lois revealed her vehicle was parked near the hotel, choosing to stay behind rather than depart immediately. This decision planted the first seed of suspicion, though at the time it seemed innocent enough. The assumption was that Lois intended to continue gambling, chasing the elusive hope of reclaiming lost funds. Her fondness for gambling was well known among those close to her. David, however, had always disapproved of this habit, valuing their hard-earned money. Together, they had built a comfortable life through diligent work and careful management. Yet Lois was not destined to stay put. She set out southward, seeking refuge in warmer climates and whatever fate the open road might hold. Along the way, she stopped at a modest come-and-go convenience store, refueling both vehicle and body. She purchased a sandwich, topped off the tank of her Escalade, and inquired about directions, careful to chart her next moves. Investigators later discovered hand-drawn maps in her car, revealing a chosen path to Fort Myers Beach, Florida, a destination she and David had once considered visiting but never had. It seemed she seized this moment to embark alone on that journey, a stark departure from their shared plans. Therese and Rod Costa, a couple from Rochester, Minnesota, had invited them to Fort Myers Beach. They owned several rental properties there, frequently hosting visitors from their hometown. Their daughter, Bree Riva, who managed the family's car dealership in Rochester, received a call from a woman identifying herself as Stormy Liberty requesting the Costas' address in Fort Myers. Such inquiries were routine, so Bree provided the information without hesitation. True to the call, Lois appeared at the Costas' home the very next day. By then, the news of Lois's disappearance and David's murder had reached national attention. At this point, Lois was only considered a person of interest, wanted primarily for suspected theft of business checks and funds. Therese Costa, known as Tess, spotted her immediately. Lois's platinum blonde hair was pulled back tightly into a ponytail, almost white under the Florida sun. Tess observed Lois as she scanned the rental properties with a calculating gaze. Concerned, Tess approached and offered assistance. Their eyes locked, and Tess felt a sudden chill, her heart pounding as recognition set in. Lois was unmistakable. Tess knew she had been missing since her husband's fatal shooting months earlier at their Blooming Prairie home. Without hesitation, Lois denied any connection, murmuring "wrong house," before hastily retreating in her SUV. Fear gripped Tess, who quickly alerted her husband to call 911. The Fort Myers Beach Sheriff's Department responded swiftly, warning the Costas to remain vigilant. The gravity of the situation struck them deeply. The danger was real, and they were caught in its shadow. Though Lois had fled the scene, she had circled back deliberately to Fort Myers Beach, as if to execute a carefully crafted plan. Her journey south was no escape, but the beginning of a chilling scheme hatched in the solitude of the open road. With only $11,000 in cash left, and credit cards that risked revealing her whereabouts, Lois needed a new strategy to stay ahead. This meant finding a doppelganger, someone who resembled her closely enough to assume her identity. And she found just such a person nearby. Pamela Hutchinson was a recent widow staying temporarily in Fort Myers Beach, grappling with her own grief. She had come to visit friends and to scatter her husband's ashes on Sanibel Island, seeking closure in her sorrow. In this vulnerable moment, Pamela crossed paths with Lois, who had also lost her husband under violent circumstances. The two women quickly formed a bond, sharing meals and drinks as their lives intertwined. On April 5th, CCTV captured Lois and Pamela together outside the Smoking Oyster Brewery, their meeting fresh but significant. Their physical similarities were striking, comparable height, build, facial features, and hair color. Investigators surmised these resemblances were no coincidence but a calculated choice. Later that night, they returned to Pamela's rental unit 404 at the Snug Harbor Marina Village complex. Security footage revealed Lois leaving the unit visibly distressed, and possibly weeping, before returning downstairs and coming back moments later carrying a bag. Hours passed as she repeated this pattern, moving large white trash bags in and out, a frantic ritual under the cover of darkness. After this eerie episode, Lois departed the property, disappearing without a trace. Meanwhile, someone posing as Pamela contacted the front desk to extend the rental stay, paying with a credit card, different from the original. The additional days were secured, but no one checked in, and silence fell over the unit. Behind closed doors, the unimaginable had occurred. In the master bathroom, Pamela Hutchinson lay shot and covered by a blanket, a grim echo of David Reese's fate in Minnesota. Medical examiners uncovered chilling evidence the fatal shots had been fired from the same .22 caliber pistol used to kill David. The bullets were fired through a bedroom pillow held close to the gun to muffle the sound. Pamela's purse was discovered abandoned on the kitchen counter. It had been thoroughly searched. All cash, jewelry, credit cards, and debit cards were missing. The hat Pamela had worn earlier that day was also nowhere to be found. That same morning, Lois drove her Escalade to Boat Anchor Point at Fort Myers Beach, roughly a mile away, and left the vehicle behind. She then walked back to Snug Harbor, stole Pamela's car, and went to a Wells Fargo branch nearby wearing Pamela's hat and carrying her ID and debit card. Using Pamela's identity, she withdrew $5,000 in cash from the victim's bank account. From this moment, Lois had fully assumed the identity of Pamela Hutchinson. She traveled 240 miles north to Ocala, Florida, and checked into a Hilton hotel under Pamela's name. There, she ordered room service twice and rented a movie. Every expense was charged to Pamela Hutchinson's credit cards. Lois signed the charges as Pamela and presented her ID without suspicion. On April 7th, still posing as Pamela, she made 3 additional ATM withdrawals of $500 each in the area. She also acquired a new low-cost cell phone, registering it under the alias Stormy Liberty. It would not be until April 9th that Pamela's body was discovered in a bathroom, the door sealed with a rolled-up towel eerily similar to the method used in the Reese home in Minnesota. Authorities immediately issued a BOLO notice for Pamela, and the U.S. Marshals escalated the manhunt, displaying Lois Reese's pictures on digital billboards across the region, offering a $6,000 reward for information leading to her capture. Later that day, Lois's Escalade was located, but by then, Lois had already fled the state, heading west toward Texas. In Louisiana, license plate readers tracked Pamela's car traveling along I-10, yet no connection was made at the time. Reports surfaced that Lois had claimed a $15 prize at a Louisiana casino using her real ID. On April 8th, Lois attempted another withdrawal from Pamela's bank account at a gas station ATM, but her $200 request was declined. Undeterred, she paid for gas and other items with cash and continued westward. Later that day, Pamela's car was spotted passing through Refugio, Texas. Once in Texas, Lois made her way to South Padre Island, a popular vacation spot near the Mexican border. She checked into a Motel 6, taking refuge in room 227. Evidence suggests she befriended another woman, yet for reasons unknown, she failed to replicate her earlier deadly pattern in Florida. On April 19th, a tip from an employee at Dirty Owl's restaurant alerted police. Lois had entered, glanced at the menu board, then left, appearing as if waiting to meet someone. Officers rushed to the restaurant, but she had vanished, trusting his instincts. One officer crossed the parking lot to check a nearby establishment, the Sea Ranch. There, Lois was found sitting at the bar, casually chatting with patrons. Officer Aguilar swiftly called for backup. With all exits secured, officers moved in and arrested her. The crime spree was over, the facade of freedom shattered. She was booked not as Stormy Liberty or Pamela Hutchinson, but as Lois Reese, a grandmother haunted by a gambling addiction and stained with blood. Lois was brought before a judge in Brownsville, Texas, who held her for extradition. The judge informed her she was wanted in both Minnesota and Florida, and would be released to whichever state arrived first. Warrants were issued to search her Motel 6 room. Inside, investigators uncovered a trove of evidence, a mix of her jewelry and Pamela's, the hat Lois wore at the bank, and 2 pistols, the .22 caliber used to kill David and Pamela, and a 9mm semi-automatic. Scissors and a roll of duct tape were also found, tools possibly intended to recreate her earlier deadly scheme with a new victim. Among her possessions were Pamela Hutchinson's credit cards and the key fob to a 2005 white Acura. That car was recovered near the Sea Ranch, impounded and sealed as evidence. Notes in her room detailed her route from Fort Myers Beach to South Padre Island. Instructions to reach the Sea Ranch and a specific time to be there. It appeared she had already targeted another potential victim. Thankfully, no one fell into that trap before her arrest. Florida was the first state to claim custody of Lois, escorted by representatives from the Lee County Sheriff's Office overseeing Fort Myers Beach. Investigators from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension were also present. Under questioning, the elusive woman, who had evaded authorities for nearly a month, no longer appeared as a criminal mastermind. She seemed weary, an older woman simply seeking her medications. Unaware of the national spotlight that had shone on her, she faced the investigators quietly. Detectives explained they had come to ask about her reasons for arriving at South Padre Island. They assured her that speaking with them was entirely her choice. She was free to answer as much or as little as she wished. Some questions awaited answers, and the detectives planned to press on gently. This was the purpose of their visit, the heart of the conversation they intended to have. The investigation was at a pivotal point, and every word could unravel more of the dark truth behind Lois's crimes. The interrogation began with a calm introduction, the officer stating his name as Jay. His partner Mark was also present, offering a point of contact should questions arise. Without hesitation, the subject requested legal representation, signaling the gravity of the situation. The officer acknowledged the request and confirmed that Miranda rights had been previously read during the recent arrest. He probed whether the subject had fully understood those rights at the time. The response was uncertain, prompting an offer to reread the rights to ensure clarity. The subject agreed, signaling a need to be fully aware of the legal protections in place. Questions about the forthcoming steps were gently invited by the officers. The subject remained firm on securing a lawyer as the officers revealed an active warrant from Florida, representing the county sheriff's office in Florida. The officer laid out the charges awaiting the subject. These included homicide, grand theft of a motor vehicle, grand theft over $5,000, and identity theft. serious allegations that would require the subject to return to Florida. The return to Florida was inevitable, with additional issues likely to surface once that case concluded. The officer assured the subject that the process was not personal. Professionalism and courtesy had been appreciated throughout. He acknowledged the subject's respectful demeanor during the encounter. The road ahead was described as long and arduous for all parties involved. Experience with several Minnesota lawyers was mentioned, hinting at the complexity of the legal battle. The subject indicated readiness to make necessary calls. The officer cautioned that Minnesota attorneys might not practice in Florida. This was a matter to discuss directly with chosen legal counsel. The subject pondered consulting with their children about attorney choices. The officers revealed ongoing contact with the subject's family, noting deep concern from both children and grandchildren. An opportunity to speak with family by phone was promised in the near future. The subject expressed a desire for guidance from their children on legal matters. In a moment of vulnerability, the subject inquired whether their children knew they were alive and in custody. The officer confirmed that the story had reached national news outlets. The arrest in South Padre Island was widely reported, including details of the subject being found by U.S. Marshals and local police. Though the subject doubted their family's awareness, the media coverage ensured the truth was public knowledge. The officer reassured that local news across the nation had picked up the story. The presence of U.S. Marshals and police reinforced the seriousness of the situation. The subject admitted uncertainty about their family's knowledge, but acknowledged the widespread media attention. A brief moment of relief came as the subject sought confirmation of ongoing communication channels. The officer indicated that investigators outside had contact information relevant to the case. Names were exchanged, confirming connections between the subject's family and law enforcement. The mention of Billy suggested that some family members were already involved in the communication loop. Officers assured that once back in Florida, concerns could be addressed more thoroughly by those prepared for the case. The subject voiced apprehension about prolonged waiting periods. The officers quickly dispelled fears of delay. They explained the holding facility was temporary pending completion of extensive paperwork tied to the serious charges. Complications arose in obtaining the subject's medication due to an ongoing search warrant at the hotel and vehicle with court approval required to enter the room. This procedural delay was frustrating but necessary to preserve evidence. The charges against Lois were grave first-degree murder with a firearm alongside identity theft, grand theft of an automobile, personal property theft, and money laundering. She faced the death penalty in Minnesota. Accused of either first- or second-degree murder for the killing of David Reese, her legal battle was daunting. Initially pleading not guilty, she was extradited to Minnesota to stand trial for her husband's murder. In her recounting to investigators, she described a heated argument after a basketball game that escalated to her husband handing her a pistol, urging her to end her own life. She claimed that instead she acted in self-defense, turning the weapon on him and firing multiple times. Despite this chilling narrative, prosecutors remained unconvinced and pressed first-degree murder charges along with several theft-related accusations. Eventually, Lois pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment in Florida. She faced additional trials for the other charges. Confronted with the death penalty, she again chose to plead guilty, securing a life sentence and ending the possibility of freedom. Her desperate flight had come to an end. Her days behind bars were assured. The brief alias Stormy Liberty became just another failed gamble in a tragic saga. Without the critical surveillance footage at the hotel, Lois Reese might have slipped through the cracks, escaping justice for her deadly crimes.